Gaza continues to brace for a looming ground offensive as millions of civilians try to leave the area. To talk more about recent developments, I'm joined now by Glenn Ignazio, military expert and retired Air Force Special Operations Commander. Mr. Ignazio, first of all, welcome. Israel has deployed tanks and weapons to the Gaza border, and military buildup continues. How imminent could a full ground invasion be at this point?
First, thank you. Nice to be back with you. I think that the invasion is imminent because the longer that this goes, the longer that they delay, the more about the sentiment of pro-Israel to pro-Palestinian starts skewing to be much more pro-Palestinian because of the damage. However, as we mentioned before, operational security is important, so they're not going to give the specific time. But I do know that the IDF has notified as much as they can, both from leaflets to phone calls to broadcasts, for Palestinians to escape. But as you mentioned, the Hamas is basically holding back as many civilians as they can as human shields, just like the hostages are.
Right. Hundreds of thousands of civilians are trying to get out of Gaza's north. With Israel's imminent attack, what stands in the way?
Well, a variety of different things. So, the Gaza Strip has a total of about 2.5 million people, but the areas that we're looking at is the North Gaza and Gaza City, which is about 1.5 million. So that's a lot of people to move fairly quickly within the last day or two. The impact that'll be for the evacuations is a couple things. First, there has been a lot of damage based on the airstrikes, so there is rubble and so forth that are blocking streets. The other thing is there's no real, I would say, infrastructure to move large amount of people as quickly as possible. Not only that is you may have elderly people or just people that are injured or children that are not going to be able to move as fast. So that's one of the biggest obstacles. The interesting part, is Hamas has developed this huge tunnel system underneath the entire area. And I am surprised actually that these tunnel areas aren't being used for civilians for bomb shelters or even movement. So Hamas is not really benefiting condoning the evacuation of civilians because, again, it plays to their benefit for a defense mechanism against the IDF.
Now, meanwhile, the situation at the Israeli-Lebanon border is escalating gradually. What would happen if Hezbollah enters the conflict?
Becomes much more complicated. Now, after, I would say, within the first 48 hours, there were some rocket attacks from Hezbollah to the north into Israel. And as you mentioned, Hamas has about 25 to 30,000 militants that fight as terrorists. And then Hezbollah has over 100,000. Again, both of these are very well maintained. They're very well structured and funded, weaponized by Iran. That's a fact and has been there for years. If Hezbollah does move in, now Israel is going to have to fight on two major fronts. With the huge buildup and the infiltration into Gaza, as they're starting, that would be an opportunity for Hezbollah to actually attack Israel and to fight on two major fronts like that, especially urban terrain within Gaza. That bogs down forces, and Hezbollah would really capitalize on that. That's when this opens up the region into much more of hostile intent, and you could see other countries starting to fall into the fray and fighting against Israel.
Now, you mentioned we don't know the exact hour of a possible ground attack on Gaza. Will the unpredictability impact evacuations?
A little bit, yes and no. I hate to say that, but the impact is to push as many civilians out as possible. And I believe that has been some of the delays. Originally, the broadcast and everything said within 24 hours. And of course, they're not going to say 24 hours and the IDF looks at the clock and makes it happen. Of course, they want that element of surprise. But the longer that they wait, first, the amount of civilians that can evacuate is definitely better. But at the same time, they do have to look at a different front. We've talked about the kinetic attack. That's actually soldiers on the ground, that it's bombs, those are airstrikes. But the psychological and the information warfare. And the information warfare is actually starting to play more against Israel because the longer this goes, people are starting to see more Palestinians impact. And we see media across the world changing things from the Israeli war to now the Gaza war. So they need to start moving on this, but at the same time, they want to get as many civilians out without the entire world starting to sway and be 100% against Israel. Now, that won't happen with some of their allies, but that is something they really have to consider because that inflames the entire Middle East area.
All right, Glenn Ignazio, military expert and retired Air Force Special Operations Commander. Good to see you again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You as well.